All right, folks, how you doing today? I'm doing a little video here. I'm going to show you something about VMware, specifically ESX 5.5. Now, I've been playing around with VMware since about 4.0, and primarily ESXi because, let's face it, VMware can be as expensive as Microsoft licensing. That said, let me show you here. I'm in the vSphere client. I'm going to tell you a couple little quick things here. The vSphere client for 5.5 is pretty much the same as it's been since 4.0. But the big difference is where it's in the client, you can actually make a new VM. All right, so, it's a new virtual machine. If I do custom, do next. Yeah, I'll just call it that. Yeah, I'll pick the data store. You see I can go up to version 8 here, and this is ESXi. All right. You can actually load or move, or however you want to get it here, onto this host. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this. You can actually load a version 9 or version 10 VM onto a 5.5 host. That's fine and dandy, except for one thing, and I'll show you real quick. I have a VM here. Now, it's not powered on, but I'm going to go ahead and do what most of us do, right-click and go, okay, we'll edit settings. Maybe I want to change memory or CPUs or something, so I'll click that. Lo and behold, look what I have here. Cannot use the vSphere's client to edit the settings of a virtual machine version 10 or higher. Use the vSphere web client. Well, unless you're paying for licensing and have an enterprise version of VMware, you're not going to have access to the web client because that takes vCenter server. Well, maybe if you had the eval license, but even that's doubtful, and then who cares? Anyway, your best way to get around this is to just not really make a VM above version 8. There's not a heck of a lot of reason to anyway, unless you're really that concerned about making whatever VMs you have and for what all intents and purposes is a lab environment and moving them into production. But just know that going in. Now, that said, that's really the most that anyone really needs to say about 5.5 and vSphere. You'll notice this other box over here. I have the vCenter converter standalone over here. This is also 5.5. And for the uninitiated, the vCenter converter is basically how you take a physical machine and make it a virtual machine. And the nice thing about 5.5 here is that you have a whole lot of physical and virtuals you can actually import into VMware. It has support for, of course, physical, the VMware machines, Microsoft Virtual PC, which is pretty much Windows XP mode, semantic crap, a Cronus True Image, I don't know what storage craft is, Parallels. If you got a Mac and you've been running a Windows virtual machine and Parallels on a Mac, you'll take that, and Hyper-V. So that's kind of nice. So it'll actually import all these functions. Here's the thing. You think, well, okay, most people are going to use this sitting at the machine, or if they happen to be in an enterprise environment, they're going to either use a backup image, maybe a powered on machine, maybe a machine that's in the infrastructure. Let's try this for example. Let's see if we can actually, and of course it's root, which is still terrible, but okay. And let me put in my super secret password. And let's go there. And you see I could actually choose this machine that's living on the server and do a conversion. And if that conversion, I can actually put on another machine if I wanted to. See, now it's retrieving it, so it's actually trying to read the VM. Hopefully this doesn't take too long because I know I have a short attention span with videos, and listening to the sound of my silky smooth voice is probably not that exciting to you. So waiting. That's the other thing. You do a lot of waiting with the vCenter converter, so it also may be having a problem because it's powered off, but it should still be able to read the configuration. So here we go. Waiting. Okay, while it's doing this, I'm going to shut up for a minute here. Okay, and you see that it came up. It finally found it. Now it's asking for the destination. As you see here, I can actually take this virtual machine and move it to another host. So that's kind of a cheap poor man's way of having vMotion, except the server's powered off and it's not going to work if it's on. But it's a way to do it, because if you go back here to the vCenter client, you know, one of the things you find out real fast about at least vSphere or the vSphere client is that you're not going to have a lot of opportunity to move things into a host other than if you can directly connect to it via local storage. You know, like here, like if we add storage, our only real choice is a local or NFS, which, okay, how many people really have NFS shares available? And of course, then we have all the rights and permissions that have to go along with that. Or an iSCSI, as you can see here, Fiber Channel iSCSI, which is again basically locally or directly attached storage. That kind of stinks, you know. So and in a pinch, it's kind of the only way you can do it is to try to cheat it with vCenter, because this is the only thing that can really make a link between one data center host and another. So you're kind of stuck there. But anyway, this isn't what we're really going to do here. But I wanted to show you the destination system when you were doing a conversion, show you that you actually could hook to another VMware ESX host. So we'll go ahead and cancel out of this. Yep, and it gets all upset about that. What I'm going to do is actually I'm going to go ahead and show you a actual in-place conversion. And again, just before we start, let's look at different options we have here. We can do a powered-on machine, which is what we're going to do. A VMware machine, a VMware workstation, because that's a little different, but it works. The backup or third party, this is where that whole list you see of the physical machines, virtual, Acronis, all that, that's where you'd have the option to actually bring in a backup image. That's another way to do it. You could have a backup image on remote storage somewhere, access it through the vCenter converter, and get it into a host that you normally wouldn't be able to. Say it's sitting on a NAS box or something like that that has absolutely no connection and no chance of a connection, save if it's got an NFS server on it. But really, I mean, it's the easiest way to get something that's not in an easily accessible location into VMware. Okay, that said, you even got Hyper-V, which is fun. This is VHDCs and all that. Now, powered on machine. I'm going to go for a remote machine, and I'm actually going to grab a Linux laptop I have here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that, just to be different. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put my address in here. This is local, so I don't care if you see it. One thing you have to know is that to work on Linux, one of the major things is root has to have SSH access, and the SSHD daemon needs to be running. And you can't have in the SSHD config file, you have to have the permission set for root to be able to log on remotely. So be aware of that. There's all kinds of articles in that about basically what you need to do to make this work. The bottom line is you have to have rights to write to the temp directory as root. You have to be able to connect as root. So Linux is weird that way. I'm going to go ahead and click Linux now. All right. I'm going to click and we're going to look at our source details here. Okay. Okay, whatever, the thumbprint, who cares? As long as it connects. I'm going to say yes, because this is a trusted source. Okay, it's getting the machine information now. So it's talking to my laptop. And this is interesting. It's like the machine I'm working on right now is, of course, this is another machine I have. My ESX server is in another room, and I'm actually talking to my laptop that's about 10 feet behind me. So this machine is really just an intermediary. But when I installed vCenter Server, I installed it as client server. So it has the worker service, the agent service, as well as the standalone service. So it's got all three services running. It has to have that so it can be that intermediary. It also means that you don't necessarily have to keep the vCenter converter dialog open when it's doing the conversion, but you can't touch those services or you'll fail the conversion. It'll never complete. The other thing you need to know is that once the conversion's done, it's going to make a VMX file. And a VMX file is a vCenter backup file that also has the hardware information that's saved in it, which is different from the VMX file that is just basically a VMware, not a VMXD or VMHD. It's not, it isn't the drive, but it's different from a backup file. You have the backup file, you have the VMware configuration file. Okay, so we're seeing the machine details of my laptop that I'm going to go ahead and create a new virtual, new VM out of. And it's picked up the hardware information, that kind of stuff, all that. So it's kind of old laptop, so it's not very impressive. So we're happy with this. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and do next. And we're going to pick our destination system, just like you saw in the other dialog. And I'll have to, again, do access to it. Now, yeah, true. This is because I'm dealing directly with the host. I don't have a vServer. I don't have, local admin logins or anything like that I can do that just work across the whole enterprise. So I am working directly with the host now. So I'll put my super secret password in there. And you see it's offering me a name and it's showing me what other VMs are on there. And I'll say next. All right, let's see, I've got this much open. All right. Say next. Okay, I'm not getting, if there was a problem with, say, size or anything like that, I would have a little red mark here that was telling me I needed to change something, but I'm not seeing any problem here. So let's look at this anyway. You always have these edit buttons. And what I'm going to do with this is, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and put that to the minimum size because it doesn't need to be that big in a virtual. And yeah, I might leave that alone. Let's see what our root is here. Okay, that's enough. That's probably just about enough. So we'll have the swap file, we'll have the home directories, and we'll have the root. So that should be enough. Now, know that because we really can't change this if this is a V10, this is your last opportunity to modify this VM, any of the hardware settings. So be aware of that. Just something to remember. And we'll look at our summary here. See, it's going to make a version 10. Let's see if we can go back and maybe change the text, change the version. No. Okay, there it is. Destination location. Let's make this a version 8 VM. We'll say next. Next. Okay. Looking good. And we got hardware version 8. Good. Scroll down all the way. And we'll say finish. And we'll go ahead. I'm going to let the job try to start. And you can see that we've already got some activity going on over here with the data store. It's allocating. Yep, and there it is. There's our new virtual machine being made. And over here in the data store, here's our job. And we click on that and we can see what's going on. Now it's saying it's going to take an hour. I'm not going to let you sit here for an hour and watch this, but we'll come back to it later. See you in a bit. Okay, so we're back. And what you're seeing here in my vSphere client is you see that we've got my new little virtual machines here. And pretty much they're ready to go. Let me advise you here, give you some words of caution here. Whether it's Linux or Windows, it's pretty much the same process, but Linux adds a few more wrinkles. One of them being that the Linux connection to the vCenter converter and to the vSphere host server is going to be using SSH. Now, there's a problem that showed up around VMware 5.1, and it has persisted. And that problem is an error. You get to about 3% in the conversion, and you get an error that says the key's not found, basically the RS key not found. It's a network error. This is very common. I've tried a lot of different methods to try to fix this. I've gone through the VMware knowledge base articles and all that. I still haven't found a fix for it myself. The only thing I could think of is that some versions of Linux don't use version 2 SSH authentication keys, so they're using RSA or DSA1, and that apparently can cause an issue. I didn't see that issue. I was actually able to connect to the physical server using both SSH1 and SSH2, or V1 and V2, and connected without an issue. Albeit V1 was a little slower, but it's still connected. So other issues that may cause that error to occur, the host allow and host deny file. If there's anything in there explicitly denying a network or a user, well, a host is just going to be network names like, you know, IP addresses or that kind of thing. That could cause it. You're basically looking for connectivity and security authentication, but this looks like this is a persistent bug, and VMware has still chosen not to fix it. They probably don't care because they want you to really use that web client. That might be yet another indication of the push to get us to use commercial products, but that's just supposition on my part. But in any case, you have the basic modus operandi here. My best advice right now is, if you had a Linux box, is that if the vCenter conversion is not working, then I suggest that you do a bare metal backup using something like a Cronus TrueImage or CloneZilla or something that will make a VMware image, something that the VMware image can read. Probably a Cronus is one of the few utilities that can actually create a file that it can use or it can read. You could physically move. If you can, again, I told you about the backup in the file locations. You could physically try to move the file onto a location that's accessible. The VMDK file, you could try to move the whole disk and try to create a VM host from there if you wanted. You could try that too. But again, it's not a perfect solution. It's obviously not the recommended solution for moving or making a physical to virtual host. You know, you've got the option. I showed you some steps to take. I have not had an issue with Windows other than with versions like Vista and Windows 7. If you're going to do a physical to virtual conversion, you should turn off UAC just for the move, then turn it back on, of course. But turn it off because that will give you an authentication error. Also, when you start the vCenter standalone converter, make sure, and most of this in Windows, by the way, to date is not a Linux version of the standalone converter, and I think that's ridiculous considering that VMware is based on a Linux foundation. But okay, that said, you should start your vCenter converter, run it as an administrator, and you get the prompt. That will save you a lot of heartache. And here you can see one of my conversions actually failed. Here's actually the error, the network error cannot, that's the SSH. That's one of the failed attempts I had. So, but knowing that, authentication is important. Making sure you're logged on as an administrator, making sure that the application starts as an administrator will save a lot of heartache if you're trying to move a Windows host. It'll also save a lot of heartache even for a Linux host. You have to have full administrative rights on the machine that's actually running the vCenter converter. So hopefully I've given you a few tips that you could use here. That's it. Have fun with it. I'm out.